So if I were on my deathbed and had one last chance to tell you guys something, it would be the most important thing I can think of, right? And that's probably the gospel. But I know like most of us, or all of us here are Christian, right? And if I asked you guys, what is the gospel? You'd all probably be able to give me an answer. And the most typical answer I've heard in church and like everywhere over the years sounds roughly something like, God created the world, but sin separated us from him. We can't fix that, so God came down to earth in the form of a man, Jesus Christ, truly God, truly man, died on the cross for our sins and rose again 3 days later. He reconciled our relationship with God and defeated death, saved us by God's grace through faith. It's not wrong, but through my walk with God and the things he's taught me, I've kind of come to the conclusion that doesn't quite answer the question, what is the gospel? That's more like how the gospel works. It's almost like the legalities of the gospel, right? Why we're justified through that, but it's not really like what is the gospel? So then what is the gospel? What is the good news? And I think if you boil it down, it's really simple, and it's simply that you can have a relationship with God if you want to. Well, you know, when we're separated from God by sin, there's no way you can have a relationship with him, even if you wanted to, right? But like no one wants to, but even if you did want to, there's no way. But the good news now is that you can if you want to. And why is that good news? Is because it means there's a happy ending. It means there's a solution to all the pain and suffering in the world, including yours and mine. There's a cure to the fatal hereditary disease called sin, right? And the cure is free to everyone who wants to take it. And the gospel has power, right? It's supernatural power. It can raise the dead to life. It can transform even the most wicked people to righteousness. It has the power to forgive and the power to renew. It turned my life around completely. But that power and that change doesn't come from understanding the theory of the gospel. It doesn't come from understanding how it works. Because the Bible tells us even the demons believe God and they shudder, right? They know how the gospel works. They know what Jesus did. It comes from actually walking with God. It comes from knowing God, not knowing about God. In other words, it comes from having an intimate relationship with God. And that's really the key, right? Relationship with God. If you think of like the thief on the cross, all he said was, Jesus, remember me when you come into your kingdom. And what did Jesus say? He said, truly, I tell you, today you will be with me in paradise. And every time I think about that part of the Bible, actually 90% of the time makes me want to cry because it's just so beautiful. If I paraphrase that short conversation, it would just be something like this. The thief, right? The thief on the cross, he'd just be like, God, I want to be with you. And God just says, sure. That's basically that conversation in a nutshell, right? It's not about, if to be with me, you got to do A, B, C, you got to pray every day, you got to study the Bible, you got to know this and know that. If you want to be with me, you can. And that's literally the good news, right? Here you have a man who by his own admission lived a terrible life of crime, serious enough to be crucified. Because he said in the Bible, when he was talking to the other thief who was mocking Jesus, like, why are you mocking him? We're here because we deserve it, right? But Jesus is innocent. So by his own admission, he's guilty. He didn't have to do anything to enter heaven. Even if he wanted to, like, bro was hanging on a cross, right? He just truly wanted to be in heaven, be with God. And if you asked him the same question I asked you guys, what is the gospel? I doubt he would have a clue. He probably wouldn't know. But this it's really important that this is in the Bible, because it tells us that the criteria for heaven is not one of doing enough good deeds or having enough knowledge, right? It's simply wanting to be there. It's really simple. And so we all have the same question posed to us in our lives. Do you want to be with God or not? And your answer to that question is what determines your eternal destiny, whether you end up in heaven or hell. If you want to be with God, you can be with him forever, enjoy his presence and company, right? That's called heaven. If you don't, you will also have your desire granted and you'll be separate from God forever. That's called hell. So we really have to get past our like works-based mentality. And it's not as easy as it seems, because we can know the gospel on head knowledge at an intellectual level, yet completely reject it on a heart level and through your actions. And that's what I did for years. What you know and what you believe are actually two completely different things. And sometimes it's kind of hard to tell the difference. You know, the truth is that God is always there. He loves you, desperately wants a relationship with you. So why is it hard to feel his love sometimes? Why is it hard to feel support? Why does life still feel so tiring? And why can it feel like God's not there? For me, the reason was that I had a few critical misbeliefs about God and faith that stopped me from entering into a relationship with God. And these misbeliefs are what kept me from experiencing the power of the gospel at a relational level, right? Only knowing about it on an intellectual level. And we can go through some of them. There's really, like I boiled it down, there's really only two. And maybe you struggle with similar issues. Hopefully after we can also pray and encourage each other to be more intimate with God. And that's the core of what I would tell people on my deathbed. I would plead with them to just try having an intimate relationship with God. Even if it's just dipping your toe in the water and getting to know God slowly. Anyway, first misbelief, number one, I projected my parents onto God. Growing up, they were super transactional with me throughout my whole life. So I thought God was like that too. And of course, this misbelief was subconscious. I didn't even know I thought this way until much, much later. And I thought that's just how relationships worked, right? You do ABC for a person and they return DEF. It's just like give and take like that. And so my idea of God was that by default, he was a cold and distant, all righteous judge, almost like disgusted by my sin. When I think of sinning and how God sees me, it's, oh my gosh, what a dirty sinner. And so I had to earn his love and approval by doing what he liked. And that included reading the Bible, praying, doing good things. It all became like a chore, right? Like a thing you have to tick off a box. Criteria to please God, and it was really exhausting. But to me, I thought it was exhausting because I wasn't a good enough Christian. So I tried to do more. And that's a really unhelpful cycle. Because you don't feel good enough, you do more. The more you do, the more you don't feel good enough. Because the more you do, the more tired you are. So that actually pushed me further and further away from God. In effect, I was trying to clean myself and then go to God thinking that he would be pleased with me, that I could earn his love and approval. And at the heart of that kind of mentality is actually self-reliance, right? You don't want God's grace. I was rejecting God's grace. I was rejecting God's offer into relationship. Like, just come to me as you are. And I was like, no. I got to rely on myself. I got to clean myself first. And this type of I call it religious Christianity. It's actually no different to any other religion in the world. Because everything other than God's grace, relationship with God, anything other than that is actually all about your performance, right? Do good, get good. Do bad, get bad. Karma, reap what you sow, etc., etc. It's all the same. But Jesus wasn't kidding when he said, my yoke is easy and my burden is light. So if you feel like your walk with God is heavy and hard, life out, it really begs the question, what yoke are you actually carrying, right? And I think a big aha moment for me was realizing that life is not necessarily easy, but relationship with God is. But I confused the two. And it's kind of funny thinking about it now. And I used to read verses like Philippians 2 verse 12, where it says like, work out your salvation with fear and trembling. And I used to think, oh, I need to keep doing good stuff to please God or he won't like me anymore and I'll lose my salvation. And can you see the transactional thinking through and through? Do good, salvation. Don't do good, lose it. And my worth in my own and God's eyes depended on my performance. It's basically like I was hanging on the edge of a cliff with God standing on the ledge looking down on me. And he's like, you better hang on or you'll fall to your death. And there's no peace in that, right? Because it depends on you. Depends on your performance, your strength. There's only fear and anxiety, right? Because at any moment you could lose it and it's all over. And can you imagine any relationship working that way? I found like a lot of the times if we think about the way we actually think about God and treat God and we put that on a person, we realize how screwed up it is. So if Jess said to me, call me 5 times a day to praise me, cook and clean for me, then do nice things for other people, or I'm divorcing you. It's ridiculous, right? But that's exactly the box I put God in. And now, thankfully, God has helped me grow and he's taught me a lot of new things. And when I read that same verse, it means something completely different. It doesn't mean do things or you'll lose your salvation. It means God has saved me already, set me free. So don't live like I'm shackled up by sin. Work out the reality that you have been set free already and live like you are. So don't live like you're still a slave to sin, because the reality is we're set free by Christ, but we can not realize that and still live like we're shackled up ourselves, right? That's what that means to me now. And another helpful like analogy I've found with thinking about sin is, and everything I said about it depends on your choice. If you want to be with God, you can. If you don't, you can be in hell if you want to. Is thinking about sin as an illness and Jesus as the cure, right? Like, if we're sick with a terminal illness and there's no cure, we die. Okay, yeah, the cause of death is the illness, right? But if there is a cure and a doctor offers you freely, and they're like, and she just says like, take this and you can be cured, and you refuse to take it and you die, what caused your death? Is it still the illness or the fact you refuse to take the cure? And so that's how I see sin now too. So what can he do? What can God do? He can't shove the cure down your throat. A controlling parent may try to do that. Shout out Asian parents out there. But God won't, right? He respects our sovereignty because he wants a relationship with us. So he won't do that. And if you've forgotten how that works or weren't here for the talk on sovereignty that really, explains that, then you can find it on Stan's channel. But that kind of thinking, that problem, like, caused me to be stuck in that mentality for a long time, which is also the second point I want to make tonight is don't trust your own thoughts, trust the word of God. Get to know God like a person you meet, not a subject to study. See, I had an idea of what God was like, right? I projected onto God. And for the longest time, I just assumed that that's how it was. I would twist sermons and the Bible to to fit my belief. For example, the Philippians 2 verse, I would twist the meaning to be like, oh yeah, it must mean I need to do more work. But I never actually even asked God, like, what are you like? Hello, God, my name's Jerry, as you probably already know. But tell me about yourself. Show me what you're like. Let's sit down and have a conversation. The most basic things you do when you first meet someone, I didn't even bother treating God that way. It's because, like, subconsciously, I treated him like a passive subject for me to study. He wasn't a real alive person. He was just a subject. It's like meeting someone new, and without really having a conversation with them, you just look at them and decide what they're like. And then even after they try to tell you things about themselves, you're just like, no, I know what you're like. It's really rude, right? But that's what I did to God, like, for years. And also happens, that is basically original sin. It's, Adam and Eve ate the fruit of the knowledge of good and evil in the garden. And from then on, they listened to themselves instead of God, right? They decided what was good and bad, not God. God said the fruit was bad, don't eat it. They decided for themselves, no, it's good. And they ate it. That's basically the human condition. And it's basically what I did to God. I decided what he was like. Instead of listening to him introduce himself, I just decided for him, right? I decided God was transactional and I ran with it, right? He never once acted transactionally to me. He never once described himself as transactional. He never once demanded things of me, but I just decided that for myself. And despite as many attempts to tell me he's not like that, probably in every single sermon, every single week, I just decided to ignore it all, right? Therefore, the Bible tells us we need to renew our minds, take captive every thought and make it subject to Christ. And in plain English, that kind of means listen to God, who is the truth, not yourself, because we can and often do lie to ourselves. It's called living in denial, right? That's why God saved the Israelites out of Egypt. He saved them out of denial. And that's from Stan, right? The beauty about having a relationship with God is you don't really need to know how to do it. You just have to want to do it, right? That's step one. You just have to want it, and God will work with you. And you don't have to understand everything. You just need to accept it. And the reason for that is you can experience something and you'll get it, even if you don't understand everything, right? I don't have to understand the physics of a stove, and understand why it's hot. If I touch it while it's hot, I know it's hot, right? It's the same with God. You need to experience his love. You just need to experience his grace and experience walking with him. And that's, it'll automatically answer all your questions, right? So I thought for discussions today as well, we could really focus on this relationship aspect with God. Do you actually have one, or are you still quite transactional with him? And or if you don't have one, what do you think is hindering you experiencing God to the fullest? And then pray for each other. Pray for our walk with God. Because really, like, when I was thinking about all the topics that we've covered, instead of adding another one that addresses one particular issue, if we literally start walking with God, he can help you work through anything. If you have like a self-esteem issue, learn to see yourself the way God sees you, and it'll fix it. If you have a pride issue, you like look down on people or whatever it is, learn to see other people the way God sees them, and that will fix it. If you feel like you can't do something because of what other people said, learn to listen to what God says about you and not other people, and you'll start restricting yourself. Like almost every topic we've talked about goes back to that core, right?
That's good.
Any questions? Otherwise we can break out. Yes?
So for you, if you were hearing that every week, but still ignoring it, what happened, what changed to make it real from your head to your heart?
Yeah. For me, because I think I'm so stubborn, God had to strip me of everything. Everything I hid behind, whether it be money, work, my own pride. And like basically when God saves people, he leads them into the wilderness, right? And that's where you get rebuilt and you get exposed. But you really grow and your relationship with God goes real deep. And that's actually like a sign of love, right? Because God wants the best for us. And the best isn't necessarily what we want. But yeah, he stripped me of everything. And I really struggled for ages till I realized everything that I said. Well, those basically two main points. But those two main points, I think, is the core of what helped me to really start walking with God relationally, and everything else, all my growth. Some of you know my story. That's amazing, life-changing stuff, right? Is out of that. Cool, shall we break out?
Yes. Wait, help here. Don't worry.
It's okay.